Hello everyone and Happy New Year. I'm Ann Ware, COSN Project Director for the collaborative work between the Panasonic Foundation and the Consortium for School Networking. That's called Collaboration for Innovation, Advancing Equity and Academic Excellence. The Panasonic Foundation and COSN provide leadership for this work, called C4I for short, and opportunities for online collegial collaboration. With 15 district leadership teams, all of which are committed to breaking the links between poverty, race, and educational outcomes for all. And as far as we're concerned, all means all. With us today, we have Dr. Jeff Moore, who's the Director of Curriculum and Instruction of the Freehold Regional High School District in New Jersey, and Grace Chesney, who serves as the Chief Accountability Officer for Howard County Public School System in Maryland. We welcome you to this important conversation today about using data to monitor progress towards advancing equity and excellence for all. And again, all means all for us. Also with us today is Scott Thompson. Scott serves as the Assistant Executive Director of the Panasonic Foundation, and he will be bringing us a welcome today from the Panasonic Foundation. Scott?
Good afternoon. I hope that the 2015 is off to a very promising beginning for everyone who's able to join this event this afternoon on this very chilly of winter days. And I also really want to express my appreciation to Jeff and Grace for dipping into their deep wells of expertise this afternoon and sharing with us, as I know they will be doing. And as always, our appreciation to our unparalleled moderator.
Thank you, Scott, so much. Let me share with those that are with us today a little bit of what we're going to learn today. And we certainly welcome your questions and your comments for Jeff and for Grace during this Google Hangout on air. What we'll hear generally is what are the reasons for focusing on this effective use of data and how it's serving both their day-to-day work and their strategic work about their goals of advancing equity and excellence. So what's their rationale, the reasons for doing this work? You'll also hear specific examples about the data that's being collected and some results to date because of this using data to inform their progress. And you'll hear some recommendations for them for those of you that also want to use data effectively, specifically around advancing equity and excellence. So as Scott indicated, we're thrilled to have Jeff and Grace with us today who are so articulate around this specific topic. And we'll start with Dr. Jeff Moore, and later we'll go to Grace. Dr. Moore?
Hi, hello everybody. Happy New Year. Thank you for that, Ann and Scott, and happy 2015. I wanted to start by just giving a little bit of an introduction to the district here in New Jersey that I'm speaking from, the Freehold Regional High School District. We have a unique structure that has a lot of bearing on how we use data. We're a regional high school district, which means that we only have grade 9 through 12 students. We collect our student body from partner sending K-8s that are totally separate districts from us. So they have separate boards of ed, separate schools, separate administrations. So we have a particular articulation challenge. We don't get to know our students as well as we really need to often until they're through the door. So that's an important thing to realize about us, because that really puts the data question on the front burner. We have a lot of collection to do and a lot of analysis to do on the students coming through the door. Now, we also, here in Monmouth County, we cover about 200 square miles with our 6 high schools, about 12,000 students, a little bit less. So good chances that if you are a student in Monmouth County, New Jersey, which is in central New Jersey, you're coming to one of our schools. We cover a large swath of the western side of the county. Now, a few years ago, we embarked on a pretty comprehensive strategic planning process, and grounded in principles of equity, the 3 objectives of our strategic plan really sum up our commitment to ensuring that all students have opportunities to pursue rigorous courses or programs that are aligned to their passions while they're here with us. And we felt, coming out of that strategic planning process, that we just simply didn't know enough about our students to fully deliver on those promises we were making, which launched us into an enormous revitalization of our data projects here. Now we have, and we've had for a long time, we have achievement tracking systems. Every teacher, every school supervisor, administrator can log into an achievement tracking system and learn an awful lot about the testing performance of the students in front of them. We use Performance Matters. I recommend a system like that, and Performance Matters has been very good for us. But I wanted to share today some of the things that we're doing that I think might be a little different, might be a little novel as we try to wrestle with the geography that we have here, being so widespread, and the unique situation we have inheriting students from other districts so late in their academic career. Now, I'm going to share my screen to show you one of the first things that we did that really launched a lot of our conversations about data here. So what you should be seeing now is a map of our district here on the western side of the county. And what we've done is we've mapped all of our students by address onto this map here through a geographical information system. We wanted something that could give us a visual representation of how our district students' population and just different demographics about them were laid out, and how that might be changing over time. So this is just a basic mapping of who they are and where they live. So you can clearly see some population centers, and there's no news there. Neither was it really news to us when we started to map out the economically disadvantaged population in our district. And what you should be seeing now is a smaller a subset of dots that represent the free and reduced lunch students. And they're classified differently, so the dots are different colors, but these are our traditionally defined economically disadvantaged students. And you can see that there are pockets and even sort of corridors and spines of those students, which gives us a different view over our district. Now, when we overlay something like student achievement on our state 8th grade, 7th grade assessments, and we zoom in on particular pockets, we can start to see other patterns. In this particular neighborhood, for example, we see some really interesting distribution of scores, with the orange and red being on the lower end and the greens being on the higher end of their 8th grade assessment. So this is an assessment they would have taken in March before they came to us. Now, what this kind of analysis did for us, I mean, we always knew our district in terms of geography and where some of the pockets of poverty and other situations were, but mapping achievement onto it in this way and mapping multiple years of achievement, we can see different changes and different effects from everything from different middle schools and different interventions that might have been put into place. And it even informs our decisions. For example, in this particular neighborhood, our summer programs take place at a high school that is about 10 miles from this neighborhood, and these are students who, among all of our students, these are the students who might be the most likely to have difficulties getting transportation to some place where we could get them to that high school over the summer. There is, however, an elementary school right in their backyard, so leading us to question how we deploy our interventions and supports to reach these most needy of populations, and the realization that that has a geographical component. I'm going to bring it back to me. There we go. Now, realizing that there are differences like that across our district, not just in terms of demographics and K-8, but also in terms of geographically distributed achievement and other kinds of things, we really started to wonder more and more about the experience that our students had prior to coming to us, and what kind of experience they were having here in terms of tracks and opportunities for them to pursue rigorous programs and discover their passions. So we ended up bringing a lot of different data together from our achievement tracking systems and other sources into a new metric to really get at a single score, a single number gauge student participation in our more rigorous programs. So we've developed this method called the Opportunity Index, in which we're really measuring the differences between a demographic group's percentage of our population, student body population, and the percentage of that group's population in a rigorous program. So we're looking at the differences between how many are there of a group within our large population and how many are there of a group within the population of our rigorous programs. Now we have multiple programs, so there was really an interest there in bringing it all together into a single score that we could track over time. And it's by no means perfect, and you'll see that as I share it. But taking those differences, mapping them onto a scale, we get a single score. I'm going to share my screen again to show you a little bit of what that looks like and talk to you about some of the pros and cons there. So you should now be seeing a chart with some green and red and yellow on it. And you can see on the left-hand side of the chart, we've taken some of the classic subgroups that are typically examined here in New Jersey and elsewhere, both ethnic and other demographics like special education, economically disadvantaged. We have their percentage of our entire population in this first column next to those labels. Then the next three columns are their percentage in the population of honors students, AP students, and our competitive magnet programs, what we call our learning centers and academies. These are competitive entry programs that students apply to coming out of 8th grade. Now we take those differences, the difference between the population, so economically disadvantaged students are about 9% of our larger population, but they're only about 4% of our honors population, almost 4.5% of our AP population, and 2.4% of our magnet program population. And when we map those differences, each one of those differences, the difference between 8.78 and 3.96, the difference between 8.78 and 4.45, and so on, we map that onto a scale that we've developed and then average that into a final score that ranges from -10 through 10. So -10 is a red zone that we're very concerned about. 10 indicates that the group has a much larger population in our rigorous programs than it does in our overall student body population, and things in between indicate different scenarios. A 0 would indicate that the representation across all of these different things is equal. So if you're 70% of the population, you're 70% of our honors population, AP, Learning Center, and Academy. That's not the goal by any stretch, but we wanted to get something of a gauge, a single number that we could share with our administrators that would ease discussions and analysis on some of this. We've been tracking this over a couple of years. You can see the columns off to the right where you can see differences now from year to year. And this not only helps us gauge some of the interventions that we might put into place specifically to impact the situation of certain subgroups in certain areas, but it also helps us diagnose any issues in the metric itself. For example, I'll come back to me here, the -10s and 10s that you see there, the method is really volatile as you get out onto those extremes, and so we need a bait here to kind of get a finer grained analysis at those wings of the spectrum. The reason being that if you're in all three of those rigorous opportunities, you kind of get counted 3 times. And if you're not in any of them, that empty seat kind of gets counted 3 times. So things get echoed loudly as you get on the ends. But we have had a lot of good discussions, and we've taken this into articulation conversations with our K-8s as well to see, what should we be looking at in here? What are the rigorous opportunities that we should be counting among those columns to bring into this opportunity index? And B, what are the appropriate responses? Is it about making more opportunities for specific groups? I mean, we don't want any group to lose ground in favor of another group to gain ground. So it's creating a lot of really sophisticated conversations here. And as a metric, I guess we can't hope for more than that. The last thing you want is a measurement that sits there and does nothing, that doesn't contribute to conversations in any way. Now, all of this, though, has also really pointed us towards specific areas in our program and in our districts that we wanted to examine a little more closely. And from the Opportunity Index, we really wanted to dive into the tracks that students were on while they're with us. And in particular, math. We started to look at our math tracks, and the number of tracks and the experience that students had on our tracks as they either accelerated, stayed flat, or decelerated in our math courses. In New Jersey, students are required to take 3 years of math up through geometry. Geometry is required, so Algebra 1 and Geometry, and then a third course that builds on the foundations of those two courses and takes them beyond into a higher level. Many students will take pre-calc, statistics. What we found, unfortunately, in our case, was that a lot of students were taking a third year that we couldn't necessarily say that we were proud of for every student. Some of those students were bottoming out, I don't mind to say, in courses that were attacking math at lower levels than we might have wanted. So we wanted to begin to build an understanding that would lead us toward a third year in math, a fourth year in math that would be compelling and would allow students to pursue passions in math if that's where their passions were taking them. So sharing my screen one more time here, take a look at a third analysis that we've done, which in many ways is the culmination of the other two. So what you're seeing, we should be seeing on the screen now, is a bar graph, again, showing some of those demographic groups. And what we've done is we looked at the class of 2014, so the seniors who just graduated last June, and we looked at each year that they were with us and what math course they chose to take next. And we counted the number of times that we considered that course to be a step up. So from a college prep level of geometry, say, to an honors level of Algebra 2. That would be an accelerating or a green bar on these bar graphs. We looked at how often those choices were a flat choice, course choice, so from a college prep geometry to a college prep Algebra 2. We looked at the number of times that those choices were decelerating choices, so a college prep geometry to a lower level Algebra 2, or even a kind of an applied math or something like that that might have been a lower speed course. And what we found as we went through this is that and it put our jaws on the floor, as a matter of fact, we found that we had offered over 440 tracks to our 3,000 graduating seniors. So our 3,000 seniors went through a total of over 440 separate tracks when we considered all of the courses and levels. So if that wasn't reason enough to do some pruning, the disparities, the differences that you see on this bar graph certainly were reason enough. So we see here that differences in experience based on, or at least related to, demographics in terms of who decelerated and who accelerated in our math program. And again, remembering that we are a regional district, so we bring students in from 8th grade. We only have articulation to impact the course progressions that they have prior to 8th grade. We began to realize that our 9th grade was of utmost importance in terms of closing gaps for our students. So this is shifting our program in two ways, this kind of analysis. We're not only really zeroing in on 9th grade as the place in which we need to close gaps to arm students to pursue their passions in math if they have them in the junior, senior year and rigorous courses. Not only is 9th grade the place to close those gaps, but we need to have courses out there in the junior and senior year that when students do land in those years, they have compelling, rigorous, comprehensive courses to take. So we have begun to prune some of the slow down, decelerating courses that we have up there in the junior, senior year and begin to pile on our supports in 9th grade as a result of this kind of analysis. We see in this analysis too, and we're seeing it in the other places as well, the Opportunity Index and in the geocoding, the Geographical Information System analysis I showed up top. We're seeing definitely the economically disadvantaged students in our district being one of the groups that we have to spend the most attention on. And we also see, as I guess a lot of districts do, the overlap between this group and racial and other groups, ethnic and other groups in our district. So what you're seeing in this graph is the rates of deceleration from 9th to 10th grade, 10th to 11th grade, and 11th to 12th grade in math. So what percentage of students took a course in 10th grade coming out of 9th that we consider to be a decelerating course. And you see that the rates of deceleration climb as we get up into the higher years. So students, if they're bottoming out, they're going to start bottoming out maybe 10th and 11th grade. And you also see the rate of economically disadvantaged deceleration much higher than the rate of deceleration for the entire cohort. So this sticks out like a sore thumb among all of the other demographic groups in our district as really something that we need to be paying special attention to as we build new opportunities out in junior, senior year, and also provide supports in 9th grade. One additional piece on this, looking at who decelerated, not just in terms of what demographic group they were in, but also what course did they take in 9th grade. And the vast majority of students who decelerated began their high school career in one of our 2 algebra levels. So we have Algebra 1 and we have a lower intermediate Algebra 1. We don't have an honors Algebra 1 level in our program right now. So over 54% of the students who decelerated started in one of those 2 courses. And we have other levels of Algebra 1 that students might have been in as well at that time. So you see Algebra 1 running across this bar graph many times, and sometimes with very tall bars. And the point made there is that students who were not accelerated in middle school, or even earlier, students who come to us from 8th grade having not taken Algebra 1 yet, taking Algebra 1 with us, were most likely to decelerate, more likely to decelerate certainly than students who had already taken Algebra 1 or even geometry in 8th grade. So the students who were not decelerated, or who were not accelerated in middle school, who weren't put into higher tracks, we were inheriting some issues there that we need to deal with in our program. So 9th grade supports, making sure we have strong concurrent supports for students that support them in their growth in math so that they can take junior, senior year courses that we and they can be proud of, that align to their passions. That was an outcome of this particular analysis and is driving a lot of programmatic change here. And it's also an outcome of all of the analyses here that I'm sharing, both the geocoding and the opportunity index as well. They really pointed us toward this conclusion. We're doing the same in social studies and science and English, and coming up with some similar conclusions that are leading to similar kinds of programmatic revisions here. So those were the 3 metrics I wanted to share to give you a sense of how we're trying to align our data analysis to strategic planning objectives that are grounded in this notion of all students being armed and ready and able to pursue their passions in the program that we offer here all the way up through their junior and senior year.
Thank you, Jeff. I have a quick follow-up question, and it's really impressive information, and you can see how it's really driving, as you indicated, very sophisticated conversations. So based on the last graph that we saw and what you said about them decelerating the most in those Algebra 1 as a 9th graders, does that influence the kind of supports that are being built inside the 9th grade year that's maybe outside of the regular Algebra 1 class that says, what can we do to get you up to speed while we have you in the course, as opposed to after you have finished the course? If so, can you speak to that just briefly?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a key thing for us at the moment, and we're going through placement of our rising 9th graders right now. We typically always had, as a lot of districts had in New Jersey, that junior year support class to prepare students for the state assessment that would be the capstone assessment for their high school career. But of course, we're not facing that any longer. We're facing a different kind of assessment regime and a different need for support. So we've given up on that model, certainly, and what we're building now is a concurrent support to Algebra 1 and any other freshman class, really. So as freshmen come in, we're trying to get ahead of identifying who could benefit from concurrent support So you would take Algebra 1 on your schedule. You would also have a concurrent support class in which a highly differentiated program in which you'd have the opportunity to practice at defeating those deficiencies that are getting in your way toward to growth in math. Zeroing in on who those students are as we leave one state test and move into another, that's a little bit challenging, but we found examinations from ACT, like the ACT Aspire, the Explore, and the Plan to be helpful in zeroing in on real specific skills that students might be struggling with.
Okay. Well, just listening and watching, it's obvious that you have moved from a gut-level decision-making process to something that says, here's what the data says, and how can we utilize it to, as you've indicated, to provide students opportunities to follow their passion and to be where they need to be as they move on to college and or career-ready future. So fantastic, fantastic. And Jeff, I feel like we'll have more conversations about this in the C4I discussion area, especially around this opportunity index, about how that was developed, and this follow-up concurrent support that you're putting into place, amongst other types of questions I'm sure that we will have. Fantastic. Okay. We'll now transition to Grace Chesney. She is the Chief Accountability Officer for her district, and Grace is going to share with us how they are utilizing data as effectively as they can to monitor how they're advancing equity and academic excellence. Grace?
Okay. Again, my name is Grace Chesney. I'm the Chief Accountability Officer for Howard County Public School, and I'm going to dive right into our presentation and start with the really our demographics and what we look like. Okay, you ready? Okay, so Howard County Public Schools is located between Baltimore, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. The median income in the county is about $109,000, a population of about 305,000. 95% of our population has earned a high school diploma or its equivalent, and about 60% of our people that live in Howard County have a bachelor's degree or higher. This is the racial background information as far as our district is concerned. We're a little bit more than 50% white, 16% Asian, 18% black, and about 6% Hispanic. When we look at our school system as a whole, and right now we're looking at 2014 data, we've got about 52,000 students in K through 12, 76 schools, race ethnicity a little less than 50% white, 18% Asian, 22% African American, and 9% Hispanic, with about 6% two or more races. Special ed makes up almost 9% of our population. Almost 20% of our students receive free or reduced meals, and less than 5% of our students receive ESOL services. As far as performance in Howard County, and all this is really important as we move forward and we talk about the data and getting people engaged in the data and to do that data analysis. So as far as our performance is concerned, we've got a 93% graduation rate, and that was as of 2013. AP pass rate of all test takers was 81%. 83% of our students participated in the SAT. Our average SAT composite score is 1657. And a little more than 82% of our students enrolled in college within a year of high school graduation, and this is based on our 2012 grads. When we look at the achievement of our graduates, in comparison to Maryland and the nation, 1653 for our 2013 graduates compared to 1483 in Maryland and 1498 in the nation. And then when we look at pass rates on the AP exam, 82% of our test takers are passing the exam compared to 60% in Maryland and 57% nationwide. However, when we delve down into our data or disaggregate it, we see that we have participation gaps on the SAT, and this is just one example. And we have huge achievement gaps as far as combined scores on the SAT. Okay, so the first question is, describe the reason your district is focusing on the effective use of data. And our superintendent was hired in July of 2012. And at that time, she decided to have a transition. Instead of having a transition team, she elected to, the reasons why we're focusing on the effective use of data is to increase student achievement, to eliminate the opportunity gap, to ensure all diploma-bound students are college and career ready, to maximize our limited resources of time and money. Now, how is or will the use of data serve to inform our goal of advancing equity and academic excellence? And again, when our superintendent was hired in July of 2012, instead of a transition team, she elected to bring CPR on board. And CPR is the Center for Educational Policy and Research at Harvard University. And they did a couple of different analyses. One of those was looking at the trends in student achievement and gaps in achievement. And they also did a review of data use in Howard County. And I'm going to go through a few slides summarizing their findings and some of the things that we've done over the last 2.5 years. So the key findings were that our elementary and middle school math and reading performance improved over the last 5 years. And however, there were large and persistent achievement gaps between student groups. He also found that an increased proportion of all students taking algebra in the early grades increased for all student groups. There were large discrepancies in the proportion of students from different groups placed in GT classes. Some of the strengths as far as data use included there were processes in place for analyzing data, however those were limited, and there are opportunities to replicate and scale the use of data. Other opportunities were to create a district-wide strategic plan. In Maryland, we have what's called the BTE, or the Bridge to Excellence, which is about a 300-page document. It's a compliance document, which has a great deal of information. However, that is very difficult to drive the work of a school system. So that was one of the opportunities for improvement that they recommended. Our challenges were that both data systems and personnel capacity obstacles hindered the ability to use data more strategically. Historical successes and overall performance had kind of created a culture of complacency that kept the district into digging deeper into rising issues. So we have this homegrown, siloed, and flexible data system. We have a limited number of analytical staff that hindered our ability to strategically manage the data. We had a homegrown data warehouse that provided a foundation. However, it wasn't designed for system-wide uses and wasn't designed to generate real-time dynamic reports. We lacked a central data system that stored data and enabled wider access to the data. And there were a lot of inefficiencies and frustrations as far as staff were concerned. We had accuracy issues and reliability issues as far as the data was concerned, and therefore the users were reluctant to use the data. We had a very small research evaluation office, about 1.5 staff members. The data, as I stated, was siloed, is in different systems, and therefore it was hard to bring together. There weren't a lot of evaluations of programs being done due to limited staff. The second bullet, there really needed to be a culture shift to be able to tolerate bad news, in essence. So when you're delving down into the data, to accept what you are seeing and make those changes. Oops, sorry. One of the statements that was made is, in the past, we didn't really focus on data. We're a high-achieving school system, so it wasn't considered particularly important. With the increasing scrutiny and higher standards in place, this is a great time to bring about the level of data consciousness that is now needed. So this is kind of our story over the last 2.5 years. So that was the data analysis that was done by C4I. And what I have in front of you now is a diagram of what we've done strategically over the last 2.5 years, what measures that we've added, and some of the professional development that's been done over the last 2.5 years. So in July of 2012, we hired a new superintendent, Dr. Renee Foos. She came in with a entry plan. We had this data analysis done by C4I. The Division of Accountability was established, so we I was hired as the Chief Accountability Officer. We hired a coordinator of research. We hired another researcher, so then we had 3 people in the research department. And we also had an analysis of our data systems done by Impact. And later on, I guess in July of 2013, we have our strategic plan. As far as measures are concerned, it's really, we brought on National Clearinghouse data in October of 2012. Prior to that time, we had gone on student-reported data. We also needed to have measures in place that were standardized, that were reliable and accurate, that were research-based. So we brought on MAP assessments, which are computer adaptive assessments that can be used, and we use it in 1st through 5th or through 8th grade for both reading and math. We also included the Gallup student poll and staff engagement surveys. It's not just about academic performance, it's about the whole child. And we administered the OECD test for schools last February. So these are some of the additional data points that have been added over the last 2.5 years. I'll come back to the professional learning over time, but everything comes back to the strategic plan. And our professional learnings occur at the principal level, assistant principal level, and also at the teacher level. The other thing I want to bring to you, this is the new strategic plan. The benchmarks, which was part of our professional learning, we'll talk about that in more detail later. Naviance, we brought that on board in 2013 at the high school level. We've now brought it on at the middle school level. We are currently bringing up a new student information system, EduPoint Synergy, a new data warehouse, VersaFit, and a new LMS. And all those will be initiated next school year. However, we're doing those data conversions in the work now, and we'll be doing professional learning in the spring and throughout the summer. Okay, so we'll kind of dig into our data analysis now. So this is our strategic plan, and everything that we do is aligned to the strategic plan. There are 4 goals. The first goal specific to student and student achievement, and that's where we'll focus our time. These are some of the performance measures that are associated with Goal 1. State assessment data, MAP data, GT, participation and performance, PSAT, attendance data, etc. All right. So what we've done is NWEA had done research around the ACT and college and career readiness. So what they found is there was a correlation between performance on the MAP assessment and earning a 24 on the ACT. So they conducted a linking study between MAP scores and ACT scores to determine the probability that a student would score at the college ready benchmarks on the ACT based on their MAP performance. So we also know that there's a concordance table between the SAT and the ACT. And a 24 on the ACT translates into a 1650 on the SAT. We use the 1650 as our college and career readiness benchmark. So we see here that score on the ACT can be viewed similarly to the SAT, that the score on the SAT can be predicted by performance on the SAT, and MAP performance is directly correlated to the ACT. So you kind of see this graphic here on how these are associated. This is really important too when we're talking about data, so we understand it from first grade through 12th grade. Have that buy-in from principals that things just don't happen at the high school level. What takes place at the elementary level supports that. These are our preliminary benchmarks that are based on the NWEA study. So at elementary school, we have MAP RIT scores, and we also have reading levels that are based on the Fontes and Pinnell. When we get down into the middle grades, we'll be benchmarking with the MAP as well as PARC assessments. At the high school level down here at the bottom, you can see in addition to PARC, we also have PSAT, SAT, and the PARC assessments, as well as AP. Oops. Okay. So we had done some analysis based on our National Clearinghouse data. So we took that data, we looked and back mapped that to 8th grade. The first thing that we found that were students that scored a 1650 or higher or a 24 or higher on the ACT in grade 12 were 4 times more likely than their peers who did not score 1650 or higher or 24 or higher to enroll in college immediately after high school graduation. So that was the first thing. The next thing we did is we back mapped all the way to grade 8. And what we found was that students who participated in Algebra 1 by the end of 8th grade were 3 times more likely than their peers to score a 1650 or higher or a 24 or higher on the ACT. In grade 9, participation in a GT course by the end of grade 9, they were 2 times more likely to earn 1650 or higher or 24 or higher on the ACT. Grade 10 students who scored a 145 or higher on the PSAT were 13 times more likely to score a 1650 or higher or a 24 or higher. And we know that these are very, very highly correlated, and College Board developed both of those assessments. In grade 11, we see participation in Algebra 2 course by the end of grade 11. Those students are 3 times more likely to earn a 1650 or higher or a 24 or higher on the ACT. Participation in at least one AP course by the end of grade 11. Those students were 2 times more likely than their peers to earn a 1650 or a 24. And students who scored a 3 or higher on at least one AP exam by the end of grade 11 were 4 times more likely than their peers to score a 1650 or a 24. So this is information we share with principals so they understand that these are our students and these are how they are performing, and these are some of the predictors of college and career readiness and enrollment in college immediately after high school. The next thing that we shared with them were our math progressions, and we used this data analysis, and we actually shared their student level data when we were having these discussions. In yellow, you see the on-grade level progression from grade 5 to grade 12, seeing students who are on grade level courses, typically taking Algebra 1 in grade 9, Geometry in grade 10, Algebra 2 in grade 11, and then may take Pre-Calc or AP Stats in grade 12. Currently, students are required to take 3. However, it's desired that they take 4, and we program for 4 math classes. When we look at the above grade level progression, which is one grade level above, you can see that grade 5 students are in Common Core grade 6, etc. But these students are taking Algebra 1 in grade 8 and have the opportunity to take AP Calculus in grade 12. We had talked about the analysis done by CEPR talking about GT enrollment. And GT in Howard County, as far as math is concerned, our students, it begins in grade 4, and students are enrolled in a course that's 2 grade levels above. So that progression is in blue. So we see students who are in GT Math in grade 4, GT Math in grade 5, and these students are taking Algebra 1 in grade 7. You see these students have not only an opportunity to take Calc AB, but they're also having that opportunity to take Calc BC in grade 12. The reason why this is important, especially at the elementary grades, is they can understand the impact course enrollment has at the early grades on what happens later on. So if students want to have opportunities to take calculus, then they're going to have to be accelerated. And how are we going to make that acceleration take place? This here is a graphic of how we are driving continuous improvement in Howard County and how we're asking principals and school-based staff to look at that. So they need to understand the research-based trends. They need to analyze their school data. They're going to interpret it. They're going to connect the data to rigorous instruction, monitor progress towards college readiness, and then refine their action plans, which leads us to some of the data tools that we have. So because we currently don't have a robust student information system data warehouse, what we've done is we've created tools for schools to use. The first one I'm going to share with you is going to be our SIP plan. And then you'll see kind of how everything starts to come together. Let's see.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
There you go.
Yep.
You ready?
Yep. You go ahead, Grace.
Okay. So our school improvement plan was based on the strategic plan and what data points we want to look at. What I'm going to show you right now is the high school improvement plan. The other issue with school improvement plans is often targets are set at the district level. And those targets may not be as rigorous for some schools as they need to be. They might have already hit those targets. And then for other schools, they're overwhelming because there's such a gap between where that target is and where they currently are. So what we provided schools with was an Excel workbook that has a great deal of information in, and they didn't have access to this kind of data before. Or if they had access to this data, they didn't have access to this data all in one place. So what we did is we looked at performance measures that were connected to college and career readiness. We provided them with their trend data. So these are the percentage of students who are meeting the benchmark. And then this is the numerator. They were setting their targets for 2015 as well as their target for 2018. And the purpose in that is because, one, what are my goals for this year? But then what are my goals 5 years out? What does that look like? What am I going to have in place to make that happen as far as staffing is concerned or course offerings are concerned? So looking at this long term, just not on a short term basis. The next column talks about the college and career readiness benchmark scores, and most of these are research-based. So here, this is based on a study by College Board, where this 145 is directly related to a 1650 on the SAT. So we have the benchmark for the composite as well as the subtests. Then when we talk about benchmarking, we're not only looking at research-based, but we also want to be able to compare nationally to the state, internationally if we have that opportunity, and then for schools themselves to be able to compare to the district as a whole. This is Howard County as a whole, but a school would be seeing their data and then being able to see how that compares to the district at large. So as far as high school indicators, we are looking at the PSAT, AP enrollment, the percentage of students who are enrolled in one or more AP classes, the percentage of students scoring a 3 or higher on one or more AP exams. And this data could be compared nationally as well as to the state. Then we have SAT, ACT. As I stated before, we administered the OECD this past February, so then we can compare to Shanghai, or we can compare to the United States as a whole. And schools can compare themselves to Howard County. We are also looking at state performance status as far as the state tests are concerned, looking at Gallup data and seeing how that's trending, and schools are expected to have goals as far as student and staff engagement is concerned, and then also looking at attendance, grad rate, dropout, and college enrollment. The neat thing about this data set that we provided to school, again, it's something they hadn't had before, but in addition to looking at aggregate, they can also look at the data disaggregated by student groups. So we, in working with Harvard, we had written some macro code, or in collaboration, they had written a macro code and then we adapted it. But they can see it disaggregated by student group. They can also see, they can go down to specific worksheets. So we can look at PSAT specifically for grade 10. We can see all the trend data. We can see the denominator. We can see more discrete information here. And for AP exams, they could see the content area of the exams, how the students performed on the exams. So again, a wealth of information in one place. So in order for schools to make decisions, they have to have access to that data. So that's really what we've been working on, is moving in the direction where data is easily accessible, it's reliable, it's accurate, and it direct the work that they do. Go back to
Grace, this is Ann. Can you hear me?
yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I lost my connection briefly. So this spreadsheet is really chock full of information to really drive instructional and administrative decisions at the school level.
Right.
Quick question for you. So would one then assume that this kind of information is also informing the kinds of staffing that's needed and or the types of professional learning that's needed?
I would say yes, in that when you're setting your 5-year targets, you're going to think about where you want to be and then how are you going to get there. It's just not going to magically occur that you're going to have more students who are taking AP classes. We're going to have to build a foundation for that over time. You know, our goal is for every student to take at least one AP course, but
sure.
However, the students need to be prepared and they need to be able to be successful. So we have to back map that. So it's, you know, K to 12 situation. But this definitely would change their staffing and what they're going to do. And that's, you know, that's kind of the bigger picture, whereas I think historically people have looked at school improvement plans 1 year at a time. Sure. And the objective here is to look at this in the longer term and be planning out in that direction.
Well, it sounds it's very obvious.
I didn't set my timer, Ann. How much time do I have?
Well, we're probably going to close here fairly soon.
Okay.
We're approaching that bewitching hour.
Okay.
But quickly wanted to mention that it sounds like, your superintendent has a commitment towards using data effectively, and you certainly have shown us some examples of that. It looks like you're going to have a very exciting fall with all of your data systems, or a lot of data systems, going live in the fall. And I'm confident, Grace, much like for Jeff, that we will have some of our colleagues of C4I that will want to learn more about the things I wrote down here that were so interesting, were your benchmarks, their performance benchmarks that you have set, and this data set spreadsheet and your strategic plan. Let me thank both Grace and Jeff for sharing with us today the important work that's going on and the decisive work that's going on in their districts with regards to using data effectively. Again, Grace and Jeff will be responding to discussions in the C4I online community of practice over the next 6 weeks, specifically about how they're using data to advance equity and excellence. So Jeff and Grace, thank you so much for joining us today. It has really been, I've taken 2 pages full of notes here, so I'll be following back up with you. But it's really been very, very formative and very, very practical. So we say goodbye to all that are with us today, and Grace and Jeff, I'll be following up soon. And our best to the Panasonic Foundation and Scott. Thanks so much.
Yes, many thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.